Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Nitin Gokhale. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine proceeds, albeit slowly, in the Ukrainian cities of Kharkiv and Kiev, the questions that are being raised are on two counts. One, what is the real Russian intention? And what should countries like India look at when this conflict plays out in its entirety? Is it a fight between Russia and Europe, Russia and the US, or is it just Russia's insecurity that is driving this invasion that President Vladimir Putin has ordered since last week? Joining me to discuss the implications of the Russian move and how the Russians are proceeding in invading, trying to invade Ukraine, in fact, is Lieutenant General RK Sawhney, who was DGMI, Director General Military Intelligence in the Indian Army, and also a scholar, strategic affairs commentator, currently with the Vivekananda International Foundation, and of course, a familiar face on Bharat Shakti. Welcome to this program, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nitin. It is always a pleasure to join you.
Thank you, sir. So let me start by asking you that why do you think Russia took this decision to invade Ukraine at a time when everything in Europe seemed to be quite calm and proceeding according to what the European nations have been doing there? So, what was Russia's real intention, do you think?
I think it's a very complicated story if you look at it. There is a background to the whole thing. If you look back, it was when the Soviet Union got disintegrated and the republics which were contained in this Soviet Union got their own independence. Or at that particular time, there was a understanding. Whether that understanding was put in formal ways or not, there was an understanding that the erstwhile Warsaw Pact countries, they would not join the NATO. So there was an understanding when it was, and of course, there was also an understanding that when East Germany joins West Germany and becomes independent, the Western troops will not be placed in that area. So these were series of understandings which were reached. And subsequently, once again, there were lots of discussions on the subject. But I'm afraid the expansion of the NATO took place at that period. Starting from 16, they have now almost reached 30. So the countries which were on the periphery, the newly uh, independent or I would say liberated countries, whatever you might call it, the Eastern European countries, they started joining the NATO, what do you call, organization, and that increased the insecurity of the at that time Russia. So there were certain discussions which took place. There were what do you call consultations which took place, but I'm afraid they were violated as far as Russia is concerned, and the NATO continued to creep closer to the Russian borders. And at one time, when the Baltic republics also, which were absolutely contiguous to the Russian territory, they also joined. So that was an area which was an area of contention, where there was a problem as far as Russia was concerned. So Russia's interests at that time, I'm afraid, were treated with a bit of a disdain, and that created a problem. Now, so far as Ukraine is concerned, it's a very peculiar country. Ukraine has got a history, and Ukraine is not a small country actually. It is size, it's got 41 billion population, and the size also, I think, is very substantial. I think it is only smaller than Russia. So it's a big country. And this country has got very peculiar features. The eastern part of, what do you call this country?
Ukraine. Yes.
Ukraine, Ukraine is got lot of Russian speaking people. There is a relationship between the two countries where there is a, and there is a relationship. They have been at sometimes part of each other. They have actually had a very close relationship, and then, of course, there have been rivalries. But there is a problem. Their contiguity itself, uh, there is a peculiar relationship with Russia. And Russia is not ever going to be comfortable if the NATO forces come into this area and become part of the NATO. So that's a big problem. And the problem has been persisting in 2014 Crimea, which, of course, if you look at the history and you look at the Russian, what do you call, understanding of that place, it was actually given away to Ukraine erroneously, according to the Russian historians. So the Crimea was, what do you call, incorporated in Russia. And once again, there was a problem as far as the Donbas area, which is the eastern, what do you call, Ukraine took place. So there is a big history as far as
So that's
relationship
why
with Ukraine.
that's why you think Vladimir Putin thought that he must send a message to the West that this far and no further. I think that was his intention. That you're creeping too close to my borders, and I need to really now stop it before it becomes too late. I think that was the reason that, as you have pointed out, as you have outlined. But coming to the immediate fallout of all this, Nilsani, is something like countries like India are caught in a cleft stick in a way, because we are friends with Russia, but we are also dependent on Ukraine and Russia both for our military hardware and otherwise on other supplies. So how does so far India has played it well, but one of the complicating factors is the presence of large number of Indians in Ukraine and their attempts to come out of Ukraine and come back to India. How does one handle that? How does the government handle it?
So that, I think, as you very correctly said, that we have managed this relationship in a very mature, credible fashion. We have got relationship with the West, and so we have got the relationship also with Russia. So this particular thing, we have very carefully tread a neutral path because we don't want to get involved into this contentious, what do you call, a problem, and we want to keep an equal distance. But unfortunately, what has happened is that we have also got a very serious problem, as you said. There were approximately, before the problem started, 20,000 students and Indians in Ukraine. So that becomes a problem, actually, if you ask me. So basically, when the problem started becoming worse, uh, India is a very responsible, what do you call, power. And they are very concerned about the welfare of the people, students, young people, or Indian nationals who are caught in these conflict areas. It's been a record actually of this government that for last 6, 7 years, ever since they are in power, wherever there has been a problem, the first intention at that particular time is to make sure that the people, Indian people, the population, Indian region people, are not caught there and they are looked after and evacuated. We have got a very proud record of that. This government has got a proud record. And there is a very well set machinery. Unfortunately, the same thing is happening as far as Ukraine is concerned. And bulk of the people, young people here in this place are students who are pursuing their medical studies. So unfortunately, when they were given the warnings, it's very difficult. There are so many now so-called strategic critics who will say that why were they not evacuated? Why did you not know that this thing will deteriorate to this level? So that, I think, I'm afraid, is a very simplistic way of looking at it. I don't think the whole world and even the Russians themselves knew in the beginning of the February or in January or December that this will deteriorate into a real battle.
In
But the
fact,
warning,
I'll stop you here. So, in fact, I just want to point out that the entire world's assessment until February 20th was that this is just a deception that the Russians are doing. They're threatening to invade Ukraine, but they will not ever launch a war. It was the American assessment, that was the Chinese assessment. I was reading some Chinese assessments and analysis. Nobody thought that they would actually go and invade. And yet, the Indian government, just to point out and reinforce what you're saying, there were two advisories issued on 15th February and 24th February, uh, asking the students to consider leaving Ukraine before it became too late. So it's not as if the government was not on board or did not know. But unfortunately, students also want to continue their studies, so we cannot blame them either.
Yeah, I agree with you because basically you're very correct. Warnings were issued, people were urged, but as you said, as is the want of youngsters and the students, they were pursuing something in their career and they kept on thinking about it. Even their parents, I have been told in so many cases that on from the February beginning, mid-February, they started urging their wards or their children to come back, but they were assured by those people themselves. The Ukraine government kept on saying that nothing is going to happen and life is going to be normal. So, this is a very peculiar sort of a circumstance. You can't blame anybody except the circumstances. So, you see, they kept giving the warnings, and hardly anybody ceded to that warning. There were special flights also arranged because, it's not only the war, it is the corona also which is impeding the process of evacuation. And then suddenly, you see, the world itself was surprised. We were surprised. And I think the government was surprised also because when Putin decided to start this military operation, everybody was taken by surprise. And even at that particular time, you see, the point was that the last flight which was arranged there got cancelled. So
Right.
this is, but after that, you must appreciate the actions taken by the government, by the MEA, that they opened their lines, they urged the students. Now, you see, what has happened is the battle has started. And
Correct.
when the war started, the push comes from various directions. Nobody can predict from which direction will the armed forces of Russia, what do you call, attack. So nothing is safe. To say that, what has happened is that some wise, so-called wise people started saying, I am afraid some of these are contractors also who deal with the students, urging them to get into a car, to get into a bus. Now, you imagine in a country of 41 million people, when they are war-torn country, which is attacked from different directions, there is a huge outflow of refugees. Now, in all directions, there are 4 or 5 countries around it, Ukraine, and in those huge convoys, which sometimes are about 20 kilometers long. So you see, some of the students, and I must say, despite the warnings, they joined them. So this is very dangerous. And some of them, what is happening, the government is getting slightly worried, and the parents have got a right to worry also. If you start listening to the rumors and if you start listening to the so-called experts, to go to a terrain, to go to an area, uncharted one, in a civil hired vehicle, you can be, there are bombardment going on, there are roadblocks put there, and a war takes place, it can be horrible. You don't even understand. There is no recognition. Anybody who's moving in a certain area is deemed by either side as enemy. So
That's
they
right.
can go in a terrible harm's way.
So
So
I
you see,
just
that
wish
is,
the parents tell their children not to, venture out without talking to the Indian officials or Indian embassies, because, like you said, we had the information from the Romanian ambassador posted in Delhi. We did an interview with her, which should be going up soon on our website. She says
yeah.
that there are 20, 30-kilometer long queues to enter Romania, and they do not take people so easily inside their own boundaries. They have to check them, even if it's a humanitarian assistance. So, one final thought, General Sani, from you: what should the parents do? You think they should be told that you hold on, you heed warnings by the Indian embassy and the Ukraine officials, and don't panic? stay where you wherever you are is what I think the best solution at the moment.
I would like to tell the parents, and I understand the pain of the parents, the anxiety. I have got my children and grandchildren, but they should advise their wards that they should stay wherever they have been told. Bunkers are safe. The bunkers which are in all the major cities of Ukraine, they have been made to withstand a nuclear attack, and nuclear attack is not taking place. They are completely safe. I understand. I have remained in a bunker. I have been shelled in a bunker. It can cause panic, but the point
Yes.
is they are the safest there. At the most, they'll have to suffer a certain amount of paucity of probably food or water, but that also is arranged in that place. So they should stay in the bunkers wherever the government, the agency, and their four cabinet ministers who are there in these four neighboring countries. MEA, I think, is doing an admirable job. They have put out a, a proper, what do you call, a machinery. Listen to them. If they tell you to go west in a train, get into the town which is the nearest to the border, and in that place, get into the bunkers till you are contacted by the teams which have been let out by the government. And the government has already evacuated almost 8,000 students. Nobody will be abandoned. I think that is something the government has a proud record in it. And I think that is where the heat should be there. And parents, with all their anxieties, should make, what do you call, keep one thing in mind. India never abandons their own, and especially the young people. So that is the
Yes.
message I wanted to
I think
convey.
those are the yes, those are the wise words coming from a veteran who has seen so many wars and so much of bloodshed and has seen conflict. Thank you, General Sahani, for those insights and those that advice, word of advice to both parents and students, and of course your understanding of why Russia did this. Let us hope that the peace prevails and the talks are on right now between Russia and Ukraine as we speak. But hopefully the crisis will end soon and all these students will go back to doing their studies, and of course the parents will feel more assured. But for the time being, it's thank you very much for joining us. We will come back to you whenever there are other insights that we require from your vast experience. But for the moment, thank you, General Sani.
Thank you so much, Nitin. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. So, viewers, do keep this in mind that when the such a crisis occurs, government never abandons its own. It makes all its efforts, but the efforts take time to fructify. The efforts take time to get implemented on the ground. So, therefore, have patience. Don't panic. Don't give in to rumors, and don't try and start giving out unverified reports, which will only add to the panic. But for the moment, that's all we have. Do keep joining us on bharatshakti.in, and of course, you know where to reach us. You know our social media handles. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel to get a right perspective, assured perspective, and not something which is trivial or which is designed to create panic. But for the moment, it's goodbye.